A traveller's eye, a bartered collection, and one tiny bottle that turned out to be a royal masterpiece. The guest shares how her grandfather, an early 20th century traveller through Eastern Europe and Asia, collected snuff bottles by trade and barter.
These were my grandfather's. In the early part of last century, he did a lot of traveling in Eastern Europe and in Asia, and I think he had a whole collection of snuff bottles. And what I understood from my grandmother is he kind of bartered for them. So he had about 30 of them in a little case that was over the fireplace in their house.
Featured here are two examples from his once 30-piece display, once proudly showcased above the family fireplace. The first is a mid-19th century bottle carved from lapis lazuli, its birds and blossoms delicately etched into deep blue stone. Beautifully hollowed and finely made, it's a lovely example of Qing dynasty craftsmanship with an estimated value of $400.
Is around $400.
But the second bottle reveals an entirely different story, an imperial treasure carved from luminous emerald green jade. Created between 1780 and 1820 for the Chinese empress herself, it hails from the esteemed imperial workshops. The carving is masterful, with foodog masks and flowing foliation, and the stopper features tourmaline, Peking glass, and jadeite details.
Because this bottle is very, very thin, and it's also beautifully carved on the side with a foodog mask and foliation that's typical of that imperial workshop.
Its paper-thin hollowing reflects both technical brilliance and the extravagant waste of rare jade, a luxury reserved only for royalty. Collectors prize such uniform, vivid green jade for its rarity and beauty, making this bottle exceptionally desirable.
The top is a tourmaline. The little white piece is a piece of Peking glass, and then there's another jadeite piece that's there on the top. But that is great, great color.
Once assumed to be worth only a few $100s, this imperial snuff bottle's true value is astonishing. At auction, it's estimated at $50,000 to $60,000 and could fetch even more.
This bottle's worth between $50,000 to $60,000.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
A bold ring, a soldier's keepsake, and a gemstone once mistaken for ordinary, but carrying extraordinary worth. The guest explains that this jade ring belonged to her uncle, a career army officer who served from World War II through 1961.
It was my uncle's. He was a career army officer. He enlisted at the beginning of World War II, and he stayed in until 1961. He loved this. He wore it a lot, and he never married, never had children, so it was part of his estate, and his sister gave me all of the jewelry that he had. So that's when this came to me.
He traveled widely, with mentions of Japan and Macau, and picked up the ring during his overseas assignments. What we see is a striking jade cabochon ring, smooth cut, bold in size, and set in 18-karat gold marked with Asian hallmarks. Jade, prized in East Asia as highly as diamonds are in the West, was often brought back by servicemen as treasured mementos.
Well, it's a pretty tough stone. As you know, jade is very hard, and that's why it's loved also, and that makes it an important gemstone, just like diamond, which is very hard.
This particular piece, likely cut between the 1920s and 1940s, shows a rich green tone, though with slight translucence when lit, placing it just shy of gem quality.
The jade is cut in a cabochon, that means unfaceted, and that's typical. You would not really facet jade. And if I had to guess, this could have been cut maybe in the 1920s to the 1940s. It's very difficult without unmounting it to really determine that.
Still, its exceptional size, deep color, and clarity make it a rare and desirable example in today's market.
As you can see, this is a beautiful color. It's very rich green. It appears to be very even.
The ring was once appraised at $15,000 nearly a decade ago, tucked away in its original, though modest, box. But today's demand for high-quality jade has soared, especially for rings of this magnitude and craftsmanship. Collectors and buyers alike are drawn to pieces like this, bold, authentic, and rich with personal history. With its heritage, material, and scale, this ring's value has grown dramatically. At auction, it would now command between $60,000 and $80,000.
A valuation of $60,000 to $80,000.
Wow, I think I'll have to raise my insurance rates.
A wartime hero's timepiece, a gripping tale of espionage and survival, and a remarkable Rolex tied to one of history's most daring prison escapes. The guest brings in her stepfather's wristwatch, discovered alongside his military medals. He was a decorated OSS agent and POW at Stalag Luft 3, the camp that inspired the Great Escape.
I brought my stepfather's Rolex watch that I found with a bunch of medals and everything. He was a POW in World War II at Sagen, Germany, in Stalag Luft 3.
Okay.
And that's the one that this book was written, and that's the one that the movie was based on.
Now that's the famous movie, The Great Escape, with
Yes.
Steve McQueen, a very famous and iconic movie.
Yes.
And your stepfather, he was the real...
Cooler King. He wrote his own book,
Okay.
Sage.
Worn by a man who risked everything behind enemy lines. The watch shares its story through both history and craftsmanship.
First of all, Stalag Luft 3, I'm not really sure of how long he actually was in that one because he really was in the OSS. He was a spy. And if they
Okay.
knew he was a spy, they would execute him.
Right.
So he posed as a pilot. When he was getting captured, he got rid of all his OSS stuff. He had been working behind enemy lines in North Africa, making manure bombs to delay the Nazis as they were coming. He was captured several times and was in solitary confinement 15 times.
But he did survive.
He
He
did survive.
escaped.
He escaped several times. Got caught. The final one was after this incident happened. He was in charge of getting rid of the sand while they were digging the tunnels, but he was not one of the 75 that escaped that night.
It's a 1940s Rolex chronograph with a stainless steel case, designed for utility during the war, and features 2 chronograph pushes and subdials. Most remarkable is its original black dial, a rare and highly prized feature among collectors due to its scarcity in this era. The timepiece remains in excellent condition, its mechanics intact and its provenance unmatched. Rolex, founded in 1905, became known for precision and innovation, values clearly reflected in this extraordinary example. Though its style is modest, the combination of rarity, condition, and personal history elevates its importance far beyond function. Collectors covet pieces like this, especially with ties to espionage and WW2 legend. And in today's market, this black dial Rolex chronograph would bring between $40,000 and $50,000 at auction.
Between $40,000 to $50,000.
Oh my gosh.
Don't fall out of the chair on me now.
I started to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did say $40,000 to $50,000.
A patriotic relic with roots in celebration, architecture, and American legacy, passed through generations and preserved with quiet reverence. The guest recalls seeing this carved medallion of George Washington in her grandfather's living room, then her father's, and now her own.
I remember it from the early 1920s hanging in my grandfather's living room. And then when he passed on, it was in my father's living room. And when he passed on...
Its origin traces back to 1824 Boston, where it adorned a floral arch during the Marquis de Lafayette's triumphant parade through the city.
This was hanging in a floral arch for Lafayette's visit in 1824 to Boston. And after the parade was over, it was like an old-fashioned homecoming celebration. Everybody shook the daylights out of the stuff.
I see, yeah.
Next day, it was found by the cleanup crew.
Recovered the following day by a cleanup crew, the carving likely survived the joyous chaos of that historic celebration. This exquisite piece is attributed to Samuel McIntyre, the famed Federal period architect and craftsman of Salem, Massachusetts. McIntyre's work, celebrated for its refined neoclassical detail, graced the grandest homes of early America, and this medallion bears his signature flourishes. Elements like the tied ribbon and carved shoulders mirror his documented designs, seen on fireplace bellows and carved furniture alike.
One of the things that I love about this are the carved elements that relate to furniture. This tied ribbon you will see on McIntyre's fireplace bellows, the same carved ribbons identical to that which are documented to McIntyre. This carving here on the shoulder, you'll see that on the sheaves of wheat of furniture, the identical sort of serrated carving.
Even more astonishing, the original paint survives beneath years of grime, gently revealed by the guest during a careful cleaning. Only a handful of similar Washington medallions are known, and nearly all reside in museums throughout New England.
George Washington was obviously an icon and a major figure. So these medallions were probably made to be placed outdoors. There were actually 8 of these listed in Samuel McIntyre's inventory when he passed away. And this possibly may be one of those 8 medallions of George Washington that are listed.
In today's market, with its provenance, rarity, and artistic merit, this carved George Washington medallion would be valued between $70,000 and $90,000.
This is probably worth somewhere in the range of between $70,000 and probably about $90,000.
Well, that's very interesting.
A lakeside meeting in the Adirondacks, a gifted painting, and a family heirloom that now holds extraordinary value. The guest shares how her great-grandfather met artist Jasper Cropsey during a stay near Lake George and received this piece as a personal memento.
It was handed down through our family from my great-grandfather, who lived in the Adirondacks area of New York State. It was painted by a gentleman by the name of Jasper Cropsey, whom he met in the Adirondacks, and asked him to make a painting for him, and Mr. Cropsey painted it and then sent it to him as a memento for their visit together.
Displayed is an original landscape by Jasper Francis Cropsey, a founding figure of the Hudson River School of American Painting. A handwritten letter from Cropsey to the guest's ancestor reveals the painting is not a literal scene, but a dreamlike impression of autumn at Lake George.
Yes.
I think it's a really charming statement from an artist about a picture, and I'm going to read just a little bit of it. The little picture is not a literal view, but an impression or reminiscence of Lake George in the autumn. Some years ago, I spent some time at Bolton-on-the-Lake, and this is one of those atmospheric dreams of the time, treasured in the mind and only now put on canvas. Hoping it may give you pleasure, yours truly, J.F. Cropsey.
This poetic note offers a rare glimpse into the artist's mind, describing it as an atmospheric dream only now realized on canvas. The Hudson River School, though not a formal institution, united 19th century artists passionate about nature, light, and romantic American vistas.
The Hudson River School is a well-known type of American painting. It's a well-known term. It's in fact a little bit of a misnomer because the pictures that are part of that school are by no means limited to pictures of the Hudson River, nor was it a formal school, but more of a loose group of artists who worked together. Cropsey was one of the first generation and one of the most important of those artists.
Cropsey's hallmark style is all here. Vivid fall foliage, golden sunlight piercing through trees, and tiny figures lending scale and serenity. The painting is signed by Cropsey and remains in stunning original condition, never restored, cleaned, or relined. Its untouched state, combined with its private, unpublished history, makes it a rare and significant discovery. Accompanied by Cropsey's signed letter, the work gains both emotional and academic value in today's collector's market. Though not for sale, its replacement value is estimated at an impressive $150,000.
I would probably be thinking of perhaps $150,000.
That's surprising.
I hope it's a pleasant surprise.
Oh, yeah, it's very pleasant.
A legacy passed down generations, a connection to Lincoln, and a document that echoes the turning point of a nation. The guest reveals her great-great-great-uncle, Daniel Goodloe, was appointed by Abraham Lincoln to commission to abolish slavery in Washington, D.C. Presented is an original 1862 document signed by Lincoln, naming Goodloe to a 3-person panel to carry out the act of compensated emancipation. This moment came months before the Emancipation Proclamation, marking Lincoln's first federal move to end slavery.
It is to do with the compensation that Lincoln gave the slaveholders in D.C.
Lincoln's signature on this commission holds immense value, capturing a pivotal stage in his evolving stance on slavery. The document reflects Lincoln's political complexity as he paired Goodloe with a slave dealer, highlighting his strategic, often agonized pragmatism.
And it ended up that on the commission was a slave dealer. It was typical of Lincoln as a compromising and adroit politician to employ somebody who we would now consider to be rather distasteful as a slave dealer as your ancestors' co-member of this commission.
Historically, Lincoln documents span many subjects, but those tied to slavery are now among the most highly prized.
And you see Lincoln at various phases. You see Lincoln documents as a Springfield lawyer, you see him as a political figure, and then you see him in the fog of war, letters by him castigating generals, supporting generals. You see a lot of little documents about pardoning soldiers who might have deserted, and then you see him on the subject of slavery. And really, nowadays, it's the slavery issue that is crucial and of most significant monetary value.
This piece, though penned by a secretary, bears the bold, authentic signature of Lincoln himself, its most valuable feature. Also signed by Secretary of State William Seward, the document offers both historical depth and rarity. Its excellent preservation and direct link to emancipation elevate it well beyond the common Lincoln ephemera. Though it once quietly lived in a family archive, its worth now stands proudly in the national story. At auction, this Lincoln-signed Emancipation Commission is estimated at $50,000 to $75,000.
I think at auction, this would bring $50,000 to $75,000. And I don't know whether that's a surprise or not.
It is a surprise.
A gift from a baseball legend, passed down through generations, and a relic from one of the sport's most historic games. The guest recounts how her husband's grandfather, a friend of Hall of Famer Bill Dickey, received this autographed ball straight from the catcher himself.
My husband's grandfather was a friend of a baseball great, Bill Dickey. And Bill Dickey must have been a very generous man because he gave a lot of baseball memorabilia from his career to my husband's grandfather, and my father-in-law gave this baseball to my husband and me.
What we see is a team-signed baseball from the very first Major League All-Star game, played July 6, 1933 at Comiskey Park in Chicago. Conceived by sports writer Arch Ward, the game featured the American League's greatest, many of whom signed this very ball. The standout, of course, is Babe Ruth, who signed the sweet spot, with Lou Gehrig and Jimmy Foxx's signatures flanking nearby. Despite the decades, the ball remains in stunning condition, helped by an early shellac treatment that fortunately preserved rather than damaged it.
A beautiful ball, and amazing that it kept its condition through the years. Part of that was due to the fact that somebody, maybe Bill himself, shellacked this ball. Now, sometimes shellacking does damage to the ball, and it all depended on the type of shellac used back then. Sometimes it browns it, and sometimes the signatures are obliterated completely. But in this case, they preserved it.
That preservation, coupled with its incredible lineup and history, elevates this piece far beyond ordinary memorabilia. The provenance is pristine, gifted by a player from the roster himself, with a direct family chain of ownership ever since.
Provenance is a word we use a lot here on this show, and of course that's the history of a piece. And this baseball in particular has a great history because Bill Dickey, one of the actual members of the team, gave this to your husband's grandfather.
That's right.
So that's amazing provenance.
Signed by some of the most iconic names in baseball, this is a treasure for collectors and sports historians alike. Its rarity, condition, and unbroken provenance make it one of the finest examples from that historic All-Star debut. Once assumed to be worth just a few thousand, its true market value has rounded the bases to something far more impressive. This 1933 All-Star Game baseball is now valued at $20,000 to $25,000.
Is $20,000 to $25,000.
That is just wonderful.
Without question, it's one of the finest 1933 All-Star Game balls I've ever seen.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
And it was a real pleasure to meet you and to see this great ball.
Oh, thank you so much.